Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back to Mr. Mahmoud Helmi channel. Today, inshallah, we will have chapter chapter 6, titled The Marquis Saint-Evremond from A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. The place, Paris, France, time 1780. Here, this is a warm-up. Be brave, Gasper. It's better for the poor child to die without pain than to live with the pain of hunger and such injuries. These words, of course, were said by Monsieur Devange to Gasper, the father of the son who was crushed under the wheels of Evermont. Let's read the summary, and while we are reading, we will say our comments to the incidents of that chapter. The Marquis Saint-Evremond. Now we will have more information about the Evermond and his tyranny, that tyrant and his bad treatment of the peasants and how he was dealing with the peasants and how he was arrogant of his treatment with the poor people. There was a fancy reception at the king's court in France. The expensive clothes and jewelry of the guests and the delicious feast spread on the table contrasted sharply with the rags and the empty stomachs of the people who lived near the palace. Here we have a question before talk about the contradictions that Charles Dickens has mentioned in his stories. Yes, that's one example of the contradictions that that Charles Dickens had mentioned in the story. Okay, the expensive clothes and jewelry and the guests and the delicious feast spread on the table contrasted sharply with the rags and the empty stomachs of the people who lived near the palace. This is an example of the contradictions that were mentioned in the story. The Marquis Saint Evremont was attending the king's reception. When the reception was over, the Marquis climbed into his coach to leave Paris so quickly as possible. He had been ignored by the king at the reception. He was very angry, so he enjoyed the reckless speed of the coach, for it made the common poor people scattered before him. It seemed that he was enjoying to see that the people were scattering before the reckless speed of his coach. Suddenly, the marked carriage crashed the small boy. The Marks would have ordered the driver to proceed, to go on, but a lot of poor people gathered around the carriage and grabbed the horses. They prevented him from going on. The Marquis was more concerned about the horses than the poor child. He said sharply, "Look at his arrogancy. He was more concerned about the horses than the poor child that he had just killed. Look, what did he say? I can't understand why you people can't take care of yourselves and your children." The Marks leaned out of the window and saw a tall man picking up the child from under the horses and began screaming, "Killed, killed." That he is talking about his son. That means that the boy was killed under the wheels of his carriage. The poor man then stood up and rushed toward the carriage. The Marx reached for his sword, but another man in ragged clothes stopped him and apologized to the Marquis, saying, "Pardon, Monsieur the Marquis, but it is his child." The Marquis looked out at the crowd and threw a gold coin, thinking that he was able to pay for anything he broke. He thought that the gold coin would comfort the grieving father and make his pain go away. He killed the boy, and he thought that the boy cost only a piece of coin, a piece of gold coin. At that moment, Devarge, the wine shop owner, rushed over to the father and comforted him, saying, "Be brave, Gasper. It's better for the poor child to die without pain than to live with the pain of hunger and such injuries." This is one of the most important quotation in the story. Be brave, Gasper. It's better for the poor child to die without pain than to live with the pain of hunger and such injuries. The Marks liked Devarge's wisdom and tossed him another gold coin. He threw another piece of gold coin to him. Once he sat back in his seat with a satisfied smile. The coin was thrown back into the carriage. Monsieur Devange took the piece of coin from the ground, okay, and he threw it back to the Marquis carriage. It, it fell onto the inside the carriage. He got angry and shouted, "Who threw that?" But Devarge wasn't there, and the poor father was still weeping on the pavement, and beside him stood Madame Devange, woman knitting. Getting no reply, the Marks ordered his carriage to go on. A stranger underneath the carriage. Now we will see another important incident in the story. Now that Gasper, after he had seen that his child was killed, he wanted to take revenge of his son. So let's see what he had done. Hours later, the carriage reached a poor village and stood at a stable to change horses. Poor peasants gathered around the coach, including a road fixer, who told the Marks that he had seen a man swinging by the chain underneath the carriage. Who do you think that man was? Of course, he was Gaspard. He was holding under the chain of the carriage, and he wanted to go until he reached the chateau or the palace to take revenge of the Marks. The Marks sent for Gabel, who was in charge of the stab, and ordered him to find the stranger if he tried to spend the night in the village. He even ordered him to kill him if he found anyone stranger, he had to kill him. He's ready for his tomb from the Jacks. That night, the Marks was expecting a visitor from London. He was his nephew, who lived in London under the name of Charles Darnley. We will see Charles Darnley again. Charles was quite different from his uncle and his late father. Charles' mother had begged him on her deathbed to be merciful to the people and to make up for the wrongs both his father and his uncle had done. She was a good lady. She advised her son to be good, to treat the poor people, to treat the peasants in a good way, She asked him to make up for the wrongs and the bad deeds that both his father and his uncle had done towards the poor people. Charles was trying to convince his uncle to change the way he treated the peasants and the poor people. Let's see what did he say to him. Sir, ours is an honorable family. We are honorable family. But we have mistreated the poor, and now we are paying for it. My father punished everyone who interfered with his pleasures, and you, my father's twin brother and heir to his property, have also done wrong. But the Marx got angry and he swore to fight to stop these revolutionary peasants from changing the ruling system in France, even if it meant fighting and imprisoning his own nephew. He threatened Charles that he will fight to keep the ruling system in France, even if he had to fight and imprison his nephew himself. Charles told him, his uncle, that he had decided to give up his property. He will not uh, 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 ask for his property in France, and that he would live in England where he wouldn't feel ashamed of his family's name. With a sly smile, the Marquis said, other Frenchmen have fled to England. Do you know? A doctor and his daughter. He wanted to tell him that we knew everything about you and the people you are making a relation with them. He meant Dr. Manet and his daughter. When the sun rose the following morning, it found the Marquis's face frozen with fear and a knife in his heart. Around the handle of the knife was a note. He is ready for his tomb from the Jacks. He was killed by Gasper, the father of the boy, that he was crashed under the wheels of the Evermont carriage. Now let's see the questions and answer. Question number one. It's a quotation. It's extraordinary to me that you people cannot take care of yourselves and your children. Comment. Of course, these words said by the Evermont. The monks of Evermont said this to the poor people of Saint Antoine when they gathered around his carriage. His carriage had just crushed a little boy under its wheels, and he only was concerned about his horses. Question number two, it's also a quotation. We have mistreated the people and now we are paying for it. Comment. Of course, these words were said by Charles Darnley to his uncle. Charles Darnley said this to his uncle, the Marquis of Evermont. Darnley didn't like the way his father and his uncle treated the poor peasants. He told his uncle that they, the Evermont family, had done many wrong deeds and they would suffer because people hated them. The Marks didn't listen to his advice and threatened to send him to prison. He was a very arrogant man. Number three, it's better for the poor child to die without pain than to live with the pain of hunger and such injuries. As I told you, this is one of the most important quotation in the story. Of course, it's these words were said by Monsieur Devange to Gasper, the father of the son that was killed under the wheels of Evermont carriage. Devange said this to the child's father when the child was killed under the wheels of the Marquis carriage. Devange was trying to comfort the father, saying that it was better for the boy to die rather than live in hunger, poverty, and sickness. Why had Charles Darnley returned to France? Of course, he wanted to fulfill his mother's wish to help the poor people and to make up for the wrongs his father and his uncle had done to them. Also, he wanted to say to his uncle that if you don't want to make up for the wrongs that you had done to the poor people and peasants, I will not live with you. I will leave my property. I will not even take the name of the Evermont family. I will give up that name. He's ready for his tomb from the Jack's comment. These words were written in the note that was left on the Marquis' body. Gaspard, the child's father, had taken revenge for his poor child the same night he was killed. And I, for one, will fight to keep these revolutionary peasants from changing the ruling system in France. Even it means fighting and imprisoning you as well. Comment. Of course, these words were said by Evermont to Charles Darnley. The Marx said this to Charles Darnley. He was determined to fight the Byzants and prevent them from changing the ruling system in France. He said that he was ready to imprison Charles himself if he had to. And as we have seen that when Charles Darnley was sent to uh, prison, okay, and there were false witnesses, I think that those witnesses were sent by Evermont, Gaspard, and other people who were witness against Charles Darnley. I think those people were sent by Evermont. Other Frenchmen have fled to England. Do you know? A doctor and his daughter comment. Who said this to whom? The Marquis said this to his nephew, Charles Darnley. Who did the speaker mean by other Frenchmen? He meant Dr. Manette and his daughter Lucy. What did the speaker mean by these words? He meant that he knew everything about Charles' life in England and who the people whom he met and lived with in England were. There I will not feel ashamed of my family name, for I do not use it. Comment. These words, of course, were said by Charles Darnley. Charles Darnley said this to his uncle, the Marquis of Evermont. Darnley declared that he would leave his property in France and live in England under a false name because he felt ashamed of his family's name. Here are extra questions. What was the relation between Charles Darnley and Marquis? The Marquis of Evermont, he was his uncle. What happened to the Marquis the night he crushed the boy who did this? He was killed by the Gaspard, the father of the boy that was killed under the wheels of the Evermont carriage. Why did the Marquis throw a coin to Gaspard? He thought that this is a cost, or this will be something that may be in return for the boys that was killed under the wheels of his carriage. Why did the Marquis give another coin to Devarge? He thought that for his good words and for his wisdom, he deserved to give him a coin. Why did Devansh believe that it was better for the child to die? What did this show about the conditions these people lived? Why did Devansh believe that it was better? Yes, it was better for the boy to live to for the child to die, because if the boy lived, he will suffer from so many people, from hunger and from pain, because he will be injured under the wheels of the carriage. Also, these are the conditions of so many people that led to the revolution later. Why was the Marquis angry while leaving the king's reception? Because he was ignored by the king. Why did the Marquis enjoy the reckless speed of his carriage? Because he was in a very bad mood after he was ignored by the king. Why was the road fixer staring at the Mark's carriage? Because he saw someone was holding in the chain underneath the Evermont carriage. Thank you very much. I wish you have enjoyed this chapter, and I wish you have understood the questions and answers. I want you to keep the questions and answers by heart and try to answer the extra questions till we meet again in chapter 7. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. See you, inshallah, next chapter. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.